jsme slyšet, dobrý. So, hello everybody, I would like to welcome you to my presentation about Czech comics today. Since this is a fair or a festival of fictitious companies, I decided to do something about comic books, like a top 5 list of contemporary comics, of comics which is published here in the Czech Republic, I mean foreign comics. For you who might not know me, my name is Holešovice. I'm the teacher at this school which organizes this event, Fair of Fictitious Companies. Let's move to the next slide. As you might see, I decided to do two main parts of this presentation. One of them is contemporary Czech comics, which means, let's say, 2-3 years old comics made by Czech people on our market for Czech people, in Czech of course mostly. And the second type, or second part of my presentation is focused on foreign comics like from France, America, Japan probably as well, and other countries which were published in our country, of course, in the Czech language. So the top 5 list, take it as like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not the best one, it's just a list. Nothing, it's not mandatory to take it so seriously, okay? So let's begin with Czechia or the Czech Republic. Here I would like to show you that there are some publishing houses that are quite known and prolific in our country. Acropolis, Ergo, Albatros, Mr. Vibira has his own publishing house as well down here. And Krev, please don't read it as crew, okay? If you say it's crew, it's like a disguise that you don't belong to the sort of comic book readers and such. So it's called Krev, not crew. And if you don't know what Krev is, it's blood. But I believe you all will check, so let's move on to another one. Number 1, it's basically a comics, it's like a study or a thesis about commercial as comics or comics in relation to commercials. It's a new book released 2 weeks ago. The people who were there unfortunately clicked too fast. Were the writers of this book, Martin Foret and Tomáš Prokupek. Both of them are my very good friends. They helped me a lot with old comics. This very book is good in one thing. It shows you how commercials, promotion works tightly with comics. From basically the very beginning of the 19th and 20th century, there's a close connection. This book represents the 20th century. There is also an attachment of comic books I will show you later in a minute. This is the table of contents of, for example, well-known Czech artists who were representatives of comic books and commercials and comics as commercials in the early 20th century. And yeah, let's move to another one. This is, for example, Pepina Reholcová. This is one of the greatest examples in our country how you can sell things to other parties like candies, some ointments, and other things related. By the way, this very comics was the first one adapted into the first Czech comics film. So no Marvel, this one was in our country, the first, in 1931 I think. Another extract, here maybe you have seen the Felix the Cat. It's an American comics, but it was quite used in our country for many times. All over the globe it was used. Unfortunately it was against the law, but copyright law was very dormant in the early 20th century, so no one knew how to handle the situation. For example, Mickey Mouse was many times copied in our country by Czech artists, and Walt Disney couldn't do anything about it the whole time. So I'll show you what Felix the Cat was representing and promoting. Here is another comics about Felix the Cat, promoting some ointments, some waters and some remedies, medicine and such. Here is another comics representing matches and lights, another artist. And this is the Felix the Cat, sorry. Come on, yeah. This is the Felix the Cat. As you might see here, there are no speech bubbles, which was quite frequent. It was a fight against the speech bubbles in the early 20th and 30th times of 20th century. Basically, it was considered a low culture if you had speech bubbles in the panels of the comic books. So it was quite regular to do some rhythm, some rhymes, some nice stories under the panels. And one of the first comics in the Czech Republic, or in the Czechoslovakia back then, was Rychlé šípy, which showed that speech bubbles belong to the comics. And Alpa Francouzka, as you might know, is still valid, it's still okay. The graphic design is still present today. And this was released for children back then. And you can find it in this very book. And it was published by Acropolis, who usually publishes books like these. It's not just comics, but regular studies, theses about anything, history, economy, ecology, you name it. Let's move to the second book, 1984. I think you all know that. It's a very good adaptation of the novel by George Orwell, 1984. This cover is in English. It was also published in our country in English version, same as in Czech, of course. The whole book was made by Matyáš Namaj, one of the good or greatest, I would say, Czech artists and illustrators in our country, contemporary comic book artist. And why George Orwell? Why suddenly this huge gap between George Orwell between 2021 and before is because it belongs to public domain. Basically, if you want to publish George Orwell, now you can because you want to. You don't have to pay anything to anyone. And that's why there were many adaptations, many books released by George Orwell in our country since 2020, January 1st. And it was published by Dobrovský in 2021, as I said, in many languages, by the way. It was also translated into Hungarian, Spanish, Italian, German, French, and any other language you can think of. Here are some extracts that you might be familiar with, like Big Brother is watching you. I believe the red one is not the blood, but the rage the book is trying to represent in the citizens in the country presented there, in the old England. See, this is the English version. It's mostly black and white, but it really is like so depressing. It's like it can drag you into the story and you really feel the depth and depression. Yeah, next. Now there is Big Brother watching you in English. Yeah, here. That's what you see the whole time in the book. Next, number 3 is Afterpunk. It's a Czech comic book published in Czech, and some portions were also translated in English as well by the one and only Czech publishing house Krev, who, really, say Krev. In 2024, it was written by Jonáš Ledecký. I think you all know him. He's the brother of Ester Ledecká, the son of Ledek Janecký or Janek Ledecký. So, he also did art, and the other artist was Michal Suchanek, not the comedian, but it's the same name, but different person. So 2 people were doing the comics. It's basically an anthology of stories, sci-fi stories, post-apocalyptic zombie, alternate histories, speculative fiction and such. Here are some extracts. By the way, it's quite interesting, the coloring. The coloring was done by Jonáš Ledecký, who is known to be colorblind. And he was forced or pushed by Michal Suchanek, please do so, try. And he really did it as a colorblind person to do the coloring in this short story collection of books and comics. This is Michal Suchanek. His figure, or the women figure, is quite similar to basically any type of heroine he is representing. For example, Comic-Con, Wonder Woman, and any other woman he is representing as the main heroine looks quite the same. It's like his trademark. Again, Michal Suchanek. And this is Jonáš Ledecký art. This is the zombie story I was talking about. It's basically about a guy drinking beer, pissing outside, and zombies trying to kill him. That's it. That's the whole point. But it's quite funny. Next, before. Yeah. Temné obilí, or as I translated it, dark wheat. In English, it was only released or published in Czech. It's basically a book of studies, and it's basically an educational story about expulsion of Germans after the World War II, or Vertreibung in German. That happened mostly in Olomouc Park and Prostějov and Přerov, so near there. This book is trying to cover how many people were killed during the time of expulsion of Germans. The whole story takes approximately 80 pages of comics, and the rest of the book is basically a study, some encyclopedic information, photographs, data, and such by other people who are behind it. But the comics was written by Martin Šinkowski and was illustrated by Ticho 762. And here are some portions of the comics. Maybe you have seen that art in ABC or ABC magazine. He's doing this sort of educational-like comics, so it's quite recognizable. Come on, yeah. And let's move to number 5. It's called Winton Wasn't Alone, or Winton nebyl sám. It's a book or comic book about Nicholas Winton. Maybe you have heard of him. He has a statue at the main train station of Prague, because he was the person who saved approximately 663 children, Jewish children, right before the World War II. So the whole story, whole comic book was dedicated to him, his people, his friends, and the whole situation right before the war, and also during the war and during the fight against the Nazis in our country. It was written by Teresa Vereska on the right of the picture, and it was illustrated by Mikuláš Podbrodsky on the left of the picture. It was a long-term project. It took approximately 15 or so years to make it right, make it okay, to make it according to the historical annals and such. So really it was a story that I think it should be one of the top comic books released or published in the Czech Republic ever. This is the cover of the book. It was also published in French, and I think they tried to publish it in English as well. It was published by Ergo in 2025. It's, as I said, a graphic novel. It's about history, about the Holocaust, but the Holocaust itself is not actually somehow represented visually or graphically in the book. It's something like to be talked about during the whole narrative. Here are some extracts of the comics. And this actually really happened like this. It was a document or a TV spot about Nicholas Winton, who was asked to take some sort of award or speech in the BBC spot on TV, of course. And this really happened like this. He was trying to sit next to his friend in the middle, that's Nicholas Winton, and he was not able to do so, so he had to sit in the middle of these, between these women, and these women who were like obnoxious to him at the very moment were the actual children who he saved. So that's quite funny and interesting. And then there's another page. They all are around him trying to hug him and thank him for saving their lives, which was really, I have the goosebumps. Yeah, I have goosebumps. It was so strong, the story. So I recommend it very much. Now let's move to comics from across the globe. These 5 publishing houses are also Czech, except one here in the middle called Monokel. It's a Slovak publishing house, but the rest of those 5 are Czech, and they mostly publish comics from foreign countries, not just Czech only. For example, Mighty Boys, they publish only, so far, they have been publishing American comics or some European comics as well. And there are other ones as well too. Maybe you are familiar with them or were familiar with them. So let's move to number 1. It says Mars or Traveling to Mars. It's one of the contemporary comics as well. It was written by Mark Russell. It was drawn or illustrated by Roberto Melli, who is Italian. So it's quite common today to have an American comics, which that is, and it's sometimes illustrated or also written by other artists, not only from America. It was published by Ablaze between 2022 and 2024 as single issues. That means 20 or so pages per one chapter. Here you have the Czech cover by Mighty Boys. It was released by Mighty Boys in 2024. It's a graphic novel, approximately 280 pages long, and what is quite funny, it's a sci-fi, yes, it's modern, yes, but it's very psychological, it's very deep, and it's basically about a guy who is here in the picture, who is on a spaceship traveling to Mars, a one-way ticket, a suicide mission, who suffers from cancer, is about to die, to make a contact, establish a contact on Mars, to get some money for his family, and basically the whole time he's regretting his life, he's flashbacking his life, commenting on everything he did, was doing or not doing, and the only company he has, they are basically two sort of stupid robots. That's the only thing that happens. The whole time you are just lamenting on life. It's very deep, it's very sad, plus the sci-fi narrative, the sci-fi setting is quite astonishing, as you might see here in the pictures. Okay? That's the Mars part. And you realize there are many robots, there is an intelligent life, blah blah blah. But basically it's a lamenting on life in a very positive way, of course. Now let's move to number 2. Maybe you have heard of Stephen King and The Stand, or Svědectví in Czech. This is the book cover, and this is the Czech comic book version of The Stand, also published by Mighty Boys in 2025, right before the Christmas, so it was a good Christmas present. It's American comics, it belongs to Marvel, it was really published by Marvel. Marvel is one of the comic book publishing houses who had no problems to publish or adapt Stephen King. They also publish The Dark Tower. And Stephen King is one of the people who has no problems to make adaptations of his works. So The Stand is one of them. It's a very long book, and it's a very long comic book. It has like 900 pages, 900. I'll show you the portions in a minute. These two artists, one of them looks Italian but is American, of Italian origin. The other one, Mikey Perkins, is British. Also, it's quite common and frequent in America to have many authors and writers and illustrators from all over the globe. And why two covers? The left one is the regular version, the right one is the limited version for subscribers. This is the American version of the single issue. That's how it looks like. The good thing is that every single cover there is, even the variant covers of The Stand, is not something you will find and see in the story, in the comic book. So it's like something new, something extra. That's why they are trying to push it above the limit. Here are some extracts of the comic book. It's from the beginning of the story. Also, one of the beginnings. Oh, what happened? Yeah, here. Sorry for that. The next top 3 is a Slovak comics called Lasinca Satinsky. It's a comic book, or 2 comic books, like 2 volumes, about 2 well-known actors of Slovak origin, but they still belong to Czechoslovakia also as well. And it has 2 volumes, as I said. The first one is Radostná správa, Joyful News, and the other one, the sequel, is Den radosti, A Day of Joy. It was written by Juro Balog. It was illustrated by Peter Gartner. As I said, it's a Slovak comics. It was published by Monocle in 2021 and 23 respectively. In Czechia, or in our country, it was published only as a portion of 19 pages in a magazine called Art in 2023. That's the only thing. The good thing is that this story, the both of them, will show you what really was going on in Bratislava during the mid-60s and then on from the 70s, 80s till 1989 and the mid-90s. You see the new wave, the Czechoslovak new wave, you see the normalization, you see the tanks, everything. And what is good for Czechs is to realize that communism in Slovakia was a little bit different than in our country, in Prague, or the center around Prague. Here are some portions. It's really one of my favorite comics, of course the contemporary ones as well. I can strongly recommend it. Yeah, number 4 is a story about let's say, a pioneer of photography called Muybridge. The whole title is in a fraction of a second. I'm really sorry for the French title, I can't read it properly, so use your imagination. Guy Delisle is a Canadian artist, a Canadian writer, mostly publishing and writing in French. And the comics was published by French publishing house called Delcourt in 2024. In our country it was published in 2025 by Centrala, which is Polish/Czech publishing house. Here are some portions of the story. Why I'm having it here is basically because of this panel in the middle, if you can see the horse. And as you can see, the horse has all four legs above the ground. And the whole time, before the, let's say, mid-19th century, every single person, every single scientist, almost everyone was thinking that horse doesn't have all of the four legs while running above the ground for a split of second. But he was trying to prove the otherwise, and he did it because of the photography and this scientific approach. But also, why you should read this book is because it's very controversial. The whole story, the whole person, Muybridge, was very controversial. He basically killed his wife and her lover. Really, he did it. There was distinct proof. But because of his science, because of his sponsor, he was released and he was not sentenced to prison in America. That's quite interesting. And he was of British origin, by the way, but he moved to America. And it's basically good to realize what was before the actual film industry. There was really the huge fight in these expos, the late 19th century, that who had the better technology. It was Edison, or if it was Muybridge, or if it was Lumiere brothers and other people like them. So let's move to another portion. See, that's the part of killing the lover and the wife. The last but not least is Španělská epopee. It's a comic book of Spanish origin. In English it would be something like a Spanish epic story or Spanish epic. It's basically a book of two stories that they overlap, made by two artists. One of them is writer Antonio Altariba and the second one is Kim. And as I said, it's Spanish. And why you should read it, why it's so interesting, is because it's a story of parents of the writer Antonio Altariba. He's trying to depict the life of his parents separately, and when they overlap during the times of Franco regime, Francoism in Spain. So the whole time he was trying to somehow show us what his parents was going through during the whole time, before the Francoism, during the Francoism, and after that, when they were really old, retired, living in the retirement community, what was before the divorce and what was urging them, what was influencing them the whole time. Both parents have different, or had different origin, different setting around them, different motions, and everything was trying to make them do things which you would normally do if the regime was okay, let's say, or democratic and such. So you see the nuances of the mind, of psychology of these two people, the mother and the father. The father's story was earlier, so it was released or published in 2009 in Spain, and the mother story was released or published 7 years after, in 2016. In our country it was published by Ergo in 2023, and I can strongly recommend it to you. It has like 400 or 500 pages. I'll show you some portions of that in black and white mostly. There are some bonus stories of people who are writing Antonio Altariba, how the story helped them and showed them the light. So the story and bonus features are mostly colored, or colored, like here. Yeah, here is the colored bonus feature, or bonus material. This is the second part. So you see really distinct features of two minds, two narratives, when they overlap, and the son is basically in the crossfire of two parents, of two strong-minded parents. And I believe we are getting to the end of our presentation, so these are my sources. And at the very last thing I would like to show you before I go getting to questions, I would like to show you 2 comic books, and I still read them. So maybe you have noticed that I didn't show you any manga, any Japanese comics. So here is something from Japan, published by Kraft. I don't prefer shonen manga for young adults, so this is, I consider it an adult manga. It's an adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft, so it's a little bit of horror, atmospheric, psychological, a little bit mental, and it was done by Go Tanabe. It's the 3rd story in a row published by Kraft by Go Tanabe. And the second one, it's like an honorary mention, is a story about a well-known Estonian musician called Arvo Pärti, who I love very much, and it's basically a story about a person who was living and suffering during the communist regime during the whole time before he moved to another country, trying to make his work and make his life in a free country. So it's about him the whole time, and I have also a picture by the artist and also an autograph by the artist. It was published last year at the Book Expo at Knihy as a new book of a new publishing house. So see, I still read them, I still love them, and there is much to see, much to read, and it's also for adults, not just for children. It's not just heroes, superheroes, or Disney or Rikla Shippy, who I also like very much, but it's something also for adults. So feel free to ask any question if you have them. Any questions? If not, so thank you for your attention and enjoy the rest of the festival, fair of fictitious companies. Thank you.